zurück mit
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm not a morning person. No, I'm good.
Neither am I. Like, no, I
I,
think that both of us have always been like night people,
I
children
definitely
of the
prefer.
night. Do you think
Yeah,
it's because
I,
do you think it's because we were goth? I think that once you're goth, you're always goth. You're goth at heart.
I definitely think there's something about being a teenager and wanting to stay up at night, and there being some sort of secret joy in the quiet hours away from humanity and family. And then that leads you to a certain type of music, which then perpetuates a cycle.
Yeah.
I'm happy to
Which is why
be that person.
I kind of wanted to have you on here because when I just think of me and music and talking about music and the people that I talk to music with, I mean, you're like at the top of the list. And I'm going to share a really weird introduction to one another. And I'm going to share it from my perspective. Okay. Because I can't talk about your perspective. I could share it from my perspective. I was leaving London. I just stayed spring or summer with my aunt. And I was kind of, I think I was 21 years old, and I was at that age where I was feisty and I was tough, and I was looking out for myself. And I remember kind of being kind of filled a little bit with piss and vinegar, just it's that age, right? It's this angsty age. And I remember getting on the plane and thinking, God, who am I going to be stuck sitting next to? Because I had, economy tickets, right? I was young. I was on a budget. And I was thinking, God, who am I going to be stuck to sitting next to on this plane? And what I saw, you were a young boy. Well, not like super young, right? Like a 14.
I was pretty. I think I was 15. I
I think
think.
you were 14. I believe you were 14.
I
I
don't
believe
think
you
I
were
was
14.
14.
I think you were
You believe
14.
it?
I really do, because I remember thinking that the reasons why you were going and your young age, I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. That you were just traveling by yourself and going to go to New Orleans. You were going to end up in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And so I thought, but you were in your smart suit jacket and a tie and everything. And I thought, all right, it's, not too bad. Um, and for a long time, you didn't say anything to me. And I think I opened up, I think it was Metal Hammer. I think I had Metal Hammer.
I think it was as
What was
well, yeah.
I opened up Metal Hammer and I could I could see your eye kind of like looking over, but it was like finally at some point you could not contain yourself and you had to express to me that that particular band that we were looking at was absolute, as you said it, shite.
Some bands are, to be fair, absolute shite.
And I thought, wow, this is a pretty brazen child to just start to. I mean, that's the first thing that came out of his mouth. And it was pretty like this band. And I thought, well, and we got to talking. And I think that in that first hour, you cited to me about 100 bands I needed to listen to, 50 more bands that were absolute shite and overrated. I mean, absolute. You asked me, what was I doing? What was I taking home? What music did I buy? Where did I buy it from? You told me that that was shite, that I shouldn't go to HMV. And
Nation.
there was just and it was the most fascinating and interesting plane ride ever. Which, what was crazy too was that, I don't know if you remember this, but I fell asleep and they served food and they forgot to serve me because I was asleep. And then when I woke up, they ran out of food. And you were really sweet. You saved me a roll. And I thought that's
Go
really
me.
lovely. I thought that's like a lovely thing for this child to do, right? He saved me a role. Um, but what was funny was I complained to Continental, like afterwards, what had happened. And what was really cool was they sent me this giant case of filet mignon. Like it was just like freeze dried, but it was like so cool. Like I didn't even ask for that. Like I didn't like complain a lot. It wasn't, I mean, it wasn't like a strongly worded mean letter. It was just like, dude, I fell asleep and I woke up and there was no food. Like who didn't count right? Somebody stole my meal.
There was someone
Um,
else 2 rows behind you who was like, "I'll have hers if she's not
right?
interested. I'll have this disgusting whatever horrible airplane food it was."
So when we met, it was back in the days that there was no there was no internet. How do I really age us? There was no internet. So because it was such a delightful conversation, we decided to be pen pals. And for years, that's how we stayed in touch, um, just writing back and forth. And then when I'd get back to London, I would go call you up. And we've been friends ever since. And like I said, most of those letters were just filled with, you need to listen to this band, you need to listen to that band. Um, and that's part of the reason I started this podcast. And I tell everybody because I assume that nobody listens. So it's like I bring it up in every single episode to be redundant because you know what? If like 10 people listen, that's like super cool, in my opinion. It's not for everybody. And I'll get back to what I was talking about why I started the podcast. That so many people, like friends that have like a lot of followers, they're really like super sweet and they try to be helpful to say, this is how you should get more followers and this is what you should do. And I'm like, nope, not going to do any of those things. And they're like, why? I'm like, don't feel like it. Like if people find us and they stay, that's pretty awesome. Like I sent Desmond, my producer slash engineer slash intern, like a thing the other day. I'm like, dude, we have like 240 followers. And both of us, we were like stoked. We're like, with like no marketing, no nothing, we were just like super stoked. It's weird there's not a lot of followers because it's just on Instagram. Like I don't really go on everything else. Like I do look at the streaming numbers, which are crazy and they don't correlate like with the follower number. And it's really interesting because I know nothing about all this, but I'm like fascinated from like a nerdy point of view of all the analytics from different sites because I found that like um I'm going off on super you know how I am, but this is super
Yeah, I'm keeping
tangent
up with
side
it.
tangent. So all the different analytics are really weird because sometimes I'll have people like in established bands do the podcast and on certain platforms they'll do really well. But then like on TikTok, which I don't have really any friends on TikTok. We don't use TikTok. It's just like gets like duplicate videos from Instagram get loaded up on there just and it's a different way for people to listen or find it, right? But the ones that get a lot of play are the ones where I'm talking to like an old friend that's not in music that's just a dad, average dad. And I was thinking, God, TikTok is really used by kids a lot. So it's just like, are kids more interested in just having like a average mom, average dad chatting about music? Is that something that they find interesting? Because I'm like, wow, that's really crazy that those numbers are higher than people that are actually in music. It's just average mom and dad talk. So I don't know.
I'm, I'm very cynical, so I'm like, maybe they're just listening so they can listen to these old people talk about music that is now just a fashion brand and not even music anymore. Old people.
Um, but so getting back, why I started it really was just that, my son's like at that age where he's starting to choose stuff on his own, right? He grew up listening to a lot of the stuff that I had. What I did for him was I had that old brick 200 gigabyte iPod, and it was like loaded with like, I think 20,000 MP3s. And so when I was a kid, how I got music from my mom, and I've talked about this, is totally illegal, but like she didn't know. She knew. But back in the day in Thailand, you could get bootlegs of cassettes, right? And it was just like a photocopy of the cover. So you never got liner notes. The tapes sometimes didn't even have like the titles on them, but you got it. It was really cheap. And she loved music and she loved Western music and she didn't really know what I would like. So the coolest thing she ever did was she bought everything, right? She just bought everything. So I had everything from like Metallica to Janet Jackson to like whatever, you know? Um, and I discovered a lot of music that way, which was really cool. Just kind of like, okay, well, what's this? What's Culture Club? This looks cool. And I remember staring at the Color by Numbers like cassette like forever as a kid. And I was like, this is the most beautiful woman I remember thinking that I've ever seen. And I'm sure that George would be happy to hear that that's what I thought, but that's really what I thought. And I would stare for hours and I thought, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And like little did I know. And then when I found out, like, you know, George was George, you know, like it didn't matter to me. Like he was so cool. That album I just played over and over because I thought, this is the most beautiful woman. Because I was a kid, right? I'm like, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I felt that way about Blondie when Blondie was on the Muppets. And I was like talking to somebody about the Muppets because a lot of kids today associate Muppets with Sesame Street and they think that Muppets is like, you know, super kid stuff. And it's like, dude, go back and watch the original Muppet Show. It's not for kids. There's that one with Rita Moreno and she's like so tongue in cheek, but it's like awesome. So, um, and I was talking to Desmond about like how much music did we discover as kids from the Muppets? Like, and it made it safe. Like Alice Cooper, like I brought this up. I discovered Alice Cooper on the Muppets. Hey, if Alice Cooper is like all freaky looking and everything, but he's on the Muppets and the Muppets say he's cool. If Kermit's cool with Alice, I'm cool with Alice, right? A lot of music was discovered that way in different genres and things like that. So that's really cool. But um yeah, so many tangents, but you know I've always been this way. So 14, what's he starting to discover on his own? And as you know, some of the stuff that he was kind of listening to or exploring when he was just kind of figuring out what is it that he likes, I was just silently like, I
Please
remember having a
explore your own
conversation.
musical expression, but not in that
I
direction.
remember having this conversation with him one time, and it was like a real life conversation. And I think that people that are super fans of music, like that feel that they're music purist, not necessarily music elitist, but music purist, right? They can sometimes kind of understand. And I sat to him and I said, you know what? It was after I listened to him play something, and I sat him down. I'm like, I would be more upset if you listen to just shit music the rest of your life than if you came home with a bunch of Fs. And I'm just going to leave that with you. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, what kind of mother says that? I'm like, because F's you can do over, you can take, you can learn down the line later on, stuff like that. But it's like, once you start listening to bad music, like, I'm afraid for you. And he's like, Mom, he's like, I'm just like checking things out. And I was like, oh, God, I don't want to be like one of those, like, you know, people. But some stuff lately is not good.
I
But
just saw it was an Insta video of Machine Gun Kelly covering Linkin Park, and it was genuinely one of the most atrocious vocal performances I have ever heard in my life. And I was like, there are children now, teenagers who are like, oh, I love MGK, so awesome. Have you heard this song? And I'm like, this is not okay. It is not okay to listen to Numb being sung badly by this dude. I would genuinely judge you as a child and be like, no, you can't do that. You're grounded.
see, I like it's hard for me because I feel one way. I feel that when people are making music and things like that, I have seen people play music that is awful music, and then I see people in the crowds singing along, and that's the most beautiful thing in the world to me. I don't care how much I hate the band, how much I hate the song. For somebody to be able to make something that can connect to a person, I think that that's so beautiful to me. And so part of me is like, if Machine Gun Kelly somehow connects to people, that's awesome. But deep down inside, I've never, you know what? I can't honestly say that I haven't heard him. Um, I do
I'll
not
send it to you.
believe.
You can enjoy
No,
it.
but no, I don't think I've heard any of his stuff. Like, just to be honest, I don't think I've heard any of his stuff, and it's not. So I can't say one way or the other. I've never heard him, because there's so much music out there, and sometimes I'm stuck in the past, and sometimes I'm still discovering treasures from the past. You know, like jazz musicians that I never heard of before that I'm just starting to hear now. And that's the cool thing about music is there's so much music out there. Um, I think that one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this was to talk to people about how they discovered music, especially people that I knew that love music, because most of the people that I bring on here, like not just like one specific genre of music, they have a massive appreciation for music across the board. How did you get there? You know, like what what did it take for you to get there, and what did it take for you to appreciate that kind of stuff, so that, you know, because there could be kids today that, and you know, and I was even talking to Anuj about this. So Anuj runs an account called Legends of Music on Instagram, and it's getting towards 1 million followers, right? And I discovered him. I joke with him when he was like vanilla, right? Like 60K followers. But um I remember I just saw this kind of like aesthetic that he had, and that attracted me first. But he just had like videos and then like little stories of bands. And this was like during just before COVID or something. And I remember sitting with my son one day and saying, oh, you know, it was like Nirvana, or it could even be Pumpkins. I've just had like this really cool experience with my son talking about so many of these bands, and it felt exciting to me. Like, I hadn't felt excited like that about talking about music since we were younger, like since we were younger. Because when we were younger, we had time to talk about music. And then we start to grow up and we start to adult, and adulting sucks, you know? And like, but in adulting, things happen. We have lives, we have work, and sometimes it's like, yeah, we still have music in our lives, but that kind of super passion for music kind of like fades and ebbs, you know? And so having a kid that was like starting to discover music again was like awesome. Like for me, you know? And then when I started, so then I started to do the podcast, and some of my, you know, the 10 people that listen, it's more than that, which is so awesome. But the people that listen started saying, hey, like my friends were saying, hey, I listen to the podcast. And man, I remember my first thing, and they started sharing these stories with me as well. And I'm like, okay, I think that I might be like on a right path of just, it's not for everyone. This podcast isn't for everyone, right? Going back to, I don't want to advertise, I don't want to do everything because it's not for everybody. And yeah, sometimes maybe I am a little bit elitist. Like, I don't want the kooks in here. I don't want somebody with like bad music
The
taste. And
band,
then
you just
no,
don't.
like I
You
don't
just hate the
want,
Kooks. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
no,
But I like of all the bands in the world, you just picked a random Britpop band. You're like the Kooks. They can cough. They're not allowed here.
no, the kooks are welcome. There's maybe one, there's that one band though that I won't talk about.
I mean, we all have that one band. I have that band.
But
Everyone
no,
has
but
that band.
it really has not, like, it doesn't have anything to do with anything about the personalities of the band. I don't even know. Like, I know one person's name in the band. That's it. Um, and I don't know anything about them. Like, I don't know any drama about them. I know nothing. But just events have unfolded over the course of my lifetime that make me hate that band. And I feel so bad and so guilty for it because they've done nothing. They've done nothing. But I hate this.
I may love that band secretly deep down. You may not know. Whereas the band I hate,
I don't think
like,
you. I don't think that you would.
oh, just don't know. The band I hate is because their music is just the most boring, vanilla, sort of beige milkshake of music, and it makes me angry. And then I couple it with the extreme confidence of the lead singer, and I hate you. You're just the worst.
I think that people do have fans that I can't think of. I honestly, I mean, aside from this band that, like, again, nothing to do with their music. I mean, I'm not a fan of the music, but I don't hate the music. It's, it's just not for me. But that, aside from that, it's got nothing to do with why I have this total and utter disdain.
Oh no, I've just remembered a second band I hate. There are two bands I hate. One of them is because they're just the worst vanilla boringness. The other one is because Axl Rose. I just hate him. And I've said it, and it's out there now, and it can't ever go back. I hate him. He's a douche.
I'm going to
He's
tell
a
you something.
douche.
I will tell you something really interesting and cool. So, you remember way back when I was a kid, I worked at a high-end luggage store, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I worked at a high-end luggage store. It was in San Diego. And Axl Rose's girlfriend at the time was Stephanie Seymour. And she was from San Diego. She was from Poway. And she came into the shop with her boyfriend so she can like buy like I think it was like a Dooney and Burke purse for her mom or something. And she was lovely. She was like totally lovely. And he was just like meek. There was like just like average metalhead boyfriend, like just quiet, just looking around. Like that's it. Like and after that, like I didn't hate him. It's just like you just the average person. Didn't hate him. Like I mean, I've ran into people in my life and I'm like, I wish them well, right? But you could say, I wish I
Yeah.
had.
I'm not even sure I wish some of them well. I just can't stand him. But it's purely because of like a I mean it's literally a Nirvana related 90s music story, right? Where he was just a dick to Kurt Cobain and therefore 14-year-old Justin, 12-year-old Justin was like, no, I hate that guy. And I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
never been able to shake it ever. Like ever. I still hate him now. And it's what, like 30
I
years on.
I love though that old 90s drama, of like things like that. I remember I mean it was great though. Like it was kind of fun in a way. Like I remember specifically one of my favorite dramas of the 90s was Kurt Loder, where it was like an MTV Music Award or something, and there was like some kind of a platform where you had to get up these stairs. And so it was a raised place where there's just two chairs and a camera to interview people, and it was like high above, and so you could see celebrities, people going in and out. And he was interviewing Madonna, and then suddenly Madonna's getting pelted with stuff like it's like lipstick, compact, and then they're looking down at who it is, and all of a sudden you just hear Madonna say, and you could hear it in her voice, there's just this uncomfortability. It's Courtney Love. And up
Brilliant.
comes Courtney, and Kurt's like, "Hey, Courtney," and um, it's like on YouTube. I'm sure people could find it, but it was one of those moments that we saw live, and it was like awesome. And I was a huge fan of Courtney at the time, so and still am. I love Courtney, right? But that was one of my favorite Courtney moments because it was just like, here's the great Madonna, right? The great Madonna that commands attention for everybody, and she was so uncomfortable. And for somebody to make Madonna uncomfortable, like I
I
thought,
mean, throwing lipstick at me when I'm on stage would make me uncomfortable, to be fair.
it's punk
Just
rock.
saying. It is punk rock, though. There were
But
loads of
no,
those in the
I
90s,
do
right?
remember. Yeah, I mean, but I specifically remember the one that you're talking about with Axel and with Kurt, and um, I mean, I think that a lot of that was exacerbated by Courtney's mouth too. I mean, because imagine, I mean, and that's it. I don't think that anyone would deny. I don't think she would deny it. She, was that kind of. She was that kind of girlfriend that would be like, my boyfriend is gonna kick your ass, right?
There's poor Kurt in the corner wearing a cardigan, being like, "I'm doing what? I just want to be left alone. I'm doing what now? That guy? Why am I? Can I not just sit with my friend? No? Okay. Right. Great. Cool. Thanks, Kurt. Cheers. I guess I'm getting in a fight now. Hold my small lady's cardigan. I'm just gonna front up to this idiot.
You know what? That's kind of sometimes how it is. I remember specifically. I'll tell you a story. It was the night that I met Sky Saxon. Sky Saxon is well known for the Seeds. a lot of people would say he is the godfather of garage rock. Um, his song "I Can't Seem to Make You Mine" has been covered by everybody from Garbage to everybody, right? The night that I met Sky, it was so funny. It was also the first night I was hanging out with this awesome woman. Her name is Lisa Nicholson, and she's actually who's singing on the intro for Sayonara Cupcake, that song.
Oh,
It's
really?
the song is called BMF. It's by a band called AM Vibe, and that is being sung by Lisa Nicholson. And so she's in that band. Lisa, Mark, and Porter are in that band. Um, and this was the first night I was going to hang out with her. And what was crazy was like this was back during MySpace when it was very band centric. I talked about this on my episode with Martin because I was on everybody's, like all these San Diego bands, like I was on their like top friends. And not because for no other reason other than I was really shy. I was an introvert. I learned that if I had a bunch of cameras hanging from me, I could go to venues. Nobody would really bother me. I didn't have to take anybody or wait for anybody to go with me. Like I didn't need a show buddy, like as a security blanket. It was like the cameras were my security blanket. But so I ended up taking a bunch of pictures and I would just like, here, send it to the band, just here's a bunch of free shots I took. And so everyone, this was before iPhones. This is before everybody had a DSLR, so they were like super stoked and they were just being nice. So they just put us up, put me on the top thing. But I was like on all these fan spaces, but nobody really knew me or anything about me. And she ended up contacting me about doing band pictures and stuff. And it just a long story short, we had mutual friends and all sorts of stuff like that. And so I said I was going to go to this, and we started talking online. And I said, I'm going to go to see Sky Saxon. She's like, I want to go. So I'm like, yeah, let's go. Like, so I picked this girl up for the first time. And we go. And it's great seeing Sky Saxon, talk to Sky, hanging out with Sky, hung out with his wife. We had mutual friends with Sky. And then we leave the venue. And this is like, we leave the venue, me and her, Lisa, then we hear like sobbing, just like sobbing in the parking lot. And Lisa's a girl's girl, and she's big. I think she's like 5'10". She's like pretty tall for a girl. Like, so she hears sobbing and she's going to go check it out because she's a total girl's girl. Love her. And so I'm waiting, just kind of standing in the dark. And then she comes back and she's like, follow me. We're gonna go find someone. And I was like, I just met this girl. Like, what's the protocol? I'm like, I gotta be your backup, right? Shit. Like, I'm like, all right, like, and then I remember thinking, like, we're gonna fight? Like, I don't, how well do I know her? I'm like, who are we gonna fight? Like, but that was like the code. That's like the girl code, right? Like, you're with somebody, she's gonna go fight. You feel like I'd never been in a fight, right? So I was just thinking, what's the camera gonna get ruined? Like, right? So like, I'm putting stuff away. Like, I'm following her, and luckily I had heels on, and so like with heels on, I was almost her size too. So at least we look like two big girls, right? Um, and then this random girl like comes out of backstage and she's young and then like Lisa just starts going off on her, like saying all this stuff. And I was like, oh wow, like I see what's going on here. This is not cool. And the girl had just been extremely disrespectful to Sky's wife. That's what this was all about. Sky's wife's like, this is inappropriate. This isn't cool. But it was like so funny because I was just like the yes man behind. I was like, yeah, what she said. Yeah. I didn't know what to do. But yeah, that's what it feels like when you get pulled into something. And the girl realized the errors of her mien, or maybe because Lisa is a very big, intimidating girl, it's all about the girl code. The girl apologized to the wife, as Lisa instructed her to. Alpha girl. I call Lisa lead sister because she's lead sister. But yeah, girl code. But that's sometimes it's the same like husband code sometimes, where if your partner's like, yeah, there's people I know, I've known people like that that have had partners like that?
I'm basically the opposite of that as a human. If my partner's like, yeah, I'm like, no, that sounds like a you problem. I'm not dealing with that. If you're just gonna go over there and start drama with random people I don't know, that sounds like you writing checks, and my butt is not gonna cash those.
It's
I'm
one of my
terrible.
favorite sayings in the world is don't make your problem my problem.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, you've got a
I'm
problem
like,
with that person that I've never met. Like, good luck to you.
I have my happy little Zen bubble. My world is full of sunshine. Don't steal my sunshine. I'm like in a
Just don't
good
bring it to
space.
my door.
Yeah, like it's like I I feel like and this is something that I think that you can relate to also as we get older and wiser. Like we're not that old, but still older and wiser is that and it's something that I try to tell my son, it's don't feel the need to keep those people that are like toxic or negative or everything all the time because there's not a lot of good that comes from that. And
And that's a hard lesson to learn.
yeah, it's a
But
super hard lesson.
it took
I
me
mean,
years. I went through most of my life. We have similar kind of lives, right? In terms of how we grew up. And I went through my whole life being like, it's okay if they're toxic. Like, they're not abandoning me. If I just like let them be toxic and horrible, then they'll still hang around and not have friends. And then I got older and uglier fundamentally and was like, actually, you know what? I don't need this shit in my life. This is just unnecessary toxicity or drama or just weights around you that you don't need. And
yeah,
it's just so much better. It took years for me to figure it out. And now I just don't have time for it. Like the minute someone is like, actually, I'm going to demonstrate to you now how I'm a terrible person. I'm like, oh, cool. Thanks. That saved me some effort in the future. So
yeah,
I really appreciate that.
yeah. It's totally true. Like sometimes when people have told me, oh, this happened, this and that, and the first question, I'm like, are you looking to just like let off steam? Or and when you want me to listen, that's cool. Or are you looking for some kind of solution? I can give you that too. And sometimes they'll say, I'm looking for a solution. I'm like, don't need that in your life, honestly. Like if people are like super toxic, and I understand where like some people might say, like, I don't want to abandon them though. They're going through something. And it's like sometimes they just need to go through it, you know? And sometimes you need to step back and let them go through it. If they're being unkind to you or toxic to you or negative to you and it's affecting your mood, that in turn affects all your other interactions, right? So there's like that domino effect of if you allow this, it's going to ricochet and affect everything else. So it's just like leave it. But like you said, it took me a long time because I always felt the same. And that's why it's like I know how that feels of like I don't want to abandon them. I don't want to maybe they don't have anybody or maybe this here's a funny story. I remember I had a friend that complained that they had new roommates and there was like three roommates and that they were utterly convinced the roommates hated them, right? So they said, "Hey, can I come crash at your place because I just really don't want to deal. Can I just crash on your couch for a night?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah. My dad just flew into town. I hadn't seen my dad like in months, right?" I'm like, "My dad just flew into town. He's staying too. Just FYI." Yeah, that's cool. Friend came, stayed on the couch, woke up, you know, folded everything, didn't go anywhere. Day turned to evening, evening turned to night. "Hey, do you mind if I crash here another night?" "Yeah, sure." What am I gonna say, right? Next night, same thing. Like 3 nights, I didn't say anything. Finally, like the 4th night, my dad's like, "How long's your friend gonna stay? Your friend's a little weird, and your friend's super negative." He's like, "I've been here for a couple. I just got off the plane, and I've heard all this crazy drama." He's like, "Of people I don't know." Like, and I remember sitting there saying, "Hey, do you think like you might want to try going back home?" And that person like yelled at me, told me I was like a horrible friend and all that. And I was just like, never spoke to them again. And I just cut them out, like completely cut them out. And I thought, is that cruel? Is that mean? Is that? And I'm like, nope, if nope. You just can't
No,
do that, man.
that's just self-care, it turns out. That's all that
Yeah,
is. You're a
yeah.
terrible person for me, and I need you not in my life. I think it's such an
But
important thing to learn.
from that, that was a huge lesson. And after that, and I realized after that, like, everything feels so much better because I'm not getting the calls every day of just like trauma dump, you know? Like, I think that I'm one of those people that I'm being an introvert, and a lot of introverts go through the same thing because we're quiet, we listen. It tends to make a lot of people dump stuff on us, which is fine. You know, it's like, it's all right. But sometimes I didn't know how to say, okay, I can't, like, I've had my fill today, you know?
Yeah,
And so I just
yeah,
listened to it and listened to it. And then I helped them, and they went on their merry way, and they're fine now. Like, whatever, they're good. They got it all off their chest. And I spend hours like, I'm sad or I'm
I've
angry
inherited
or like,
someone else's sadness for no reason. Yay!
yeah, yeah, you know, so like I try to tell like my friends when they're coming over here with all this drama, I'm like, why are you guys dealing with drama? Like, why? Just, you know, they're like, oh, this person. I'm like, just let them be for a while then. Doesn't mean you have to cut them out forever. Just let people be. Do your own thing. Let them do their thing. If they come around, they come around. If they don't, man, that saves you a lot of time and effort, right?
Yeah. Find who was I talking to about this? I was talking to a friend about it the other day. Give and take friends versus just give or take friends, right? So
Yeah.
you want give and take friends. So if I'm having a shit time, I can call you and be like, I'm having a shit time. But also I can call you and be like, oh my god, this amazing thing. Give and take,
Yeah.
right? Or if you need me.
Yeah.
But there are some people who they just take friends, and so they'll get in touch when they need you, or when they want to moan, or when they need to offload, or when they need you to emotionally support them. And then thanks, bye. I'm done with you now. I'll come back around next time I need it. And those friends they're the pits, and they drag you down, and they really damage your own sense of who you are and self-worth, and you need to sort
Yeah.
of excise them from your life. But it took me years to figure out that some people, in fact, certain people that you and I have talked about in the 90s are just, we say no more, are just not, they're not give and take. They're just take, take, take. And
Yeah.
also they're toxic, want to be alpha males, and I don't need them in my life. Bad people out there ruining my
This
life,
is
listening to
all
Coldplay and
very
pissing me
true.
off.
You know what? The Chris Martin is a I've told this story on the podcast before. Lovely person.
No,
I did not
no,
like I stood next to him as he interacted with somebody else like backstage, and he was so lovely. And I thought, oh,
no,
that's a lovely person.
no,
The energy was good. I think that she
no,
did. I think the energy was
no,
good.
no,
You know what
no.
I love about our friendship though is that we've been friends forever, and I love that sometimes long spans of period can go by, but we can just pick up where we left off. Um, and I think that that's such a blessing, you know? That's like such a, like, it's one of those things that as you get older in life and you reflect on things that are important to you, it's like, it's one of the things I value most is like our friendship, you know? There's like, there's a couple of, I mean, I always have a small circle, but of the small circle, there's still like, you know, extra special people that I'm like, my life is so much better because of this friendship over the years, you know. So, and as to what you're saying, I agree with everything of what you're saying with all the trauma dumping, which is, I know, exactly the opposite of you and me, where we just keep everything in and don't tell
Yep.
anybody.
Nope.
We're
That's your secret Anglophile action right there. Is you're like, what would a British person do in this situation? They're not going to tell you shit. You don't need to know anything about my life.
you
I'm
know, but
fine.
I don't think that it's just British people because I, you know, work with a lot of British people, and um a lot of those people will tell you everything.
Really,
Even when
they're
you
not my
don't
kind of people.
when you don't ask, they tell you everything. I
You
mean,
see that I
it's
associate
funny.
with being American massively, right?
Really?
Like, yeah, that whole. Obviously, I lived in America for a few years and been to America a lot, and I married an American. Um, and they just want to tell me their life stories for no real reason, just because I happen to be sharing a queue for a coffee. And I'm like, why?
I
Why
think
are you
I
talking
think
to
it's
me?
because you're an empath, not because you're British. I think it's because you're an empath.
I try and give out vibes of just leave me the fuck alone, but it doesn't seem to work.
Yes, you do. It's true. This I will absolutely say, as long as I have known you, as long as because even when you were sitting there telling me those bands were shite, it was still kind of with this like almost like a, I wouldn't say arrogance, but a confidence of leave me alone.
Yeah.
But I'm being kind of nice and I'm going to save you a role. See, your mama raised you well.
Yeah, kind of in an emotionally neglectful way. But yeah, she I think I was 15, not 14. I'm just saying. I'm just going to throw it out, but I can't because my memory is awful. I can't remember for sure that I was 15, but I feel like I was. And I had to wear that stupid like smart jacket and tie because my mum and her boyfriend at the time were like, "You've got to dress up and look like an adult because you're 15 and you're flying by yourself." And I was like, I think that this is the opposite, but sure, I'm going to dress in a ridiculous clothing and sit in an uncomfortable economy seat in the middle of the middle as well.
Yeah, we
Who
were in the
does
middle
that?
of the middle.
Like,
We were in the middle of the
awful.
middle.
And
But you kind of had that like Angus Young thing. That just sounded creepy, right? That really just
yeah,
sounded
great.
creepy.
Yeah, it was the shorts that really did that. To be honest with you, I
No,
probably
yeah, I
shouldn't
mean, you
have
didn't
had
have the shorts, but you had, the
the.
tie on.
It
Because,
was ridiculous.
yeah, you were at Dulwich then. Did
Yeah,
I
yeah,
ever
yeah,
tell you that for a while Dulwich had a school here in Thailand?
yeah, yeah. I knew about that. Yeah,
Been crazy though. Like, because
it's
I
just
would have
one of
no
those beautiful
connection to
small
it.
world things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do through me. It's a
Yes,
whole
the small
connection. That's
thing.
like just a second degree of separation.
What I also wanted to talk about, because I sometimes am nostalgic and reminiscent, but because people don't understand, it is different. Like everything's different now, right? Like with music and finding music. And now there's the internet. So people's time and attention is so divided. Um, but like I remember, you introduced me to a band, Placebo. And I I remember that was one of the first bands you recommended to me. Like you wrote, it was in the letter. You wrote and said you need to listen to this band Placebo. And I remember I got the album and just absolutely just blown away. Like I hadn't exactly heard anything like that, their debut album. And so every time I hear the debut album now, it just takes me back to that time in London because I would just have it on my, Discman, and I'd just walk around London. It'd be rainy, and that song, Teenage Angst, would be on, or Lady of the Flowers, you know, um, mesmerized, right? And you introduced me to Ash, and you introduced me to Dodgy, and I mean,
Oh,
there's all
dodgy.
these different, yeah, you introduced me to, I mean, all these bands, but it was so great because you were in Europe. So and you were into music as a kid. So tell me, how did you get into, like, you knew a lot already. You obviously were quite opinionated at 14 or 15. You were confident enough, to share with I was a woman, like I was a grown woman at 21. You were able to share with a grown woman your thoughts on music. I mean, that takes confidence, or you're on the spectrum.
I think we know which it is. It's not confidence. I got into music. Oh man, like so. My earliest memory. This is my actual earliest memory. I mean, I'm an actual baby, right? Like I can sit up, and my mum and my dad, who are still alive, are arguing over who owns a Beatles record. And they have the vinyl and they're literally putting it between them and swearing at each other. And that's my earliest memory. Like one of the only things that my mum and dad genuinely cared about was music. And my mum is still huge into music. And like, she's just like this massive closeted Dylan fan. And like, she never tells anyone. But then like every so often you'll come in and there'll be like this hissing, crackling, like super old Bob Dylan vinyl going around. I'm like, oh, okay, we're having one of those days. Cool. And so from a really early age, I remember music being really important. And I remember a lot of like, so we had no money. So when we went on holiday, it was because someone else had gone out of their house to go on holiday and they were like, you can house it for us. That's your holiday. And there would be a lot of driving in this battered old Ford Escort, listening to like crazy 60s mixtapes for like 6 hours at a time. And that was like, became a sort of safe place, right? It was just when there's music playing and that's all that's in your head and like everyone's quiet except for that, or they're just singing along and it just felt like that's your happy place.
You had a Peter
And like,
Quill experience.
yeah, exactly that.
You had a
Exactly
Peter
that.
Quill childhood with your
Yeah,
mom's mixtapes. That's really
exactly.
cool, though.
Yeah, that was on my first intro into music. And then, God, I was like 7 or 8 and I heard, I think it was Paula Abdul. I think it was Paula.
Was
And
it
I was
straight
like,
up?
I think it was straight up. I like it genuinely think
Do
it
you
was
know I
straight up.
recently put that on my playlist because I heard it after not hearing it for years, and I'm like, oh damn, that was a good song. Like I forgot that was a good song, and so I put it on my playlist. And
It's,
this is funny. Like people, it'd be shocking for people to know that I would put because they look. People would look at you. People that even know you look at you, or look at people that know me, look at me, and they think, oh God, they would never be into Paula Abdul. But respect, Paula Abdul,
it's different
respect.
now, right? Like you can look back at those 80s pop bangers and be like, they were cool. Like it's okay to say they were cool.
Yeah,
Like they're not necessarily the 80s music that I put at the top of my list, but
yeah,
it was cool.
yeah,
But I was listening to that and on the radio, I was like 7 or 8 and I was like, oh, okay. There's other music that isn't just, the 60s that I could listen to. This is interesting. And then I was like, hey, mum, can I have like a radio or something? She was like, yeah, sure, we can get you a radio. And then I'd like listen to just, whatever the pop music was at the time. And then at 11, my friend Alex, he got a bootleg, as we were talking about, of Nevermind and Pretty Hate Machine, A and B side, and put that on for me. And I was like, oh shit, this is like, this is music. This is incredible. I've never heard anything like this before. Either of them, right? Like,
yeah,
obviously, Nirvana has a very special place in my heart, but like, when you first hear Head Like a Hole, right? The lead track on Pretty Hate Machine, you're like, or at least 11-year-old Justin's just like, what
yeah.
is happening? Like, what is this music? And I was like, okay, this is my jam. I want to hear more of this. And then I think it was that year that I asked Leslie for my mum for, I think I asked her for like the actual cassette of like Nevermind. I was like, I want this. She's like, yeah, cool. I'll get you that for your birthday. Tina Turner Greatest Hits is what I opened for my birthday. These are not the same thing. Like, thanks. I've never really listened to Tina Turner, but thanks. And I realized then that I was going to have to sort of forge my own path into getting hold of music, which also involved a lot of Camden Town bootlegs. But like that was a moment I'll never forget in his flat where he put that on and I was like, oh, this is my music. Like unquestionably the moment, the moment It Smells Like Teen Spirit starts, you're just like, okay, this is my path now. I'm with it. Music has been a constant companion and solace throughout my life. My dad died when I was young. My mum worked like 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like I never saw her. And I'm also pretty introverted and very introverted. I'm just a hermit. I hate people. And so I just like music was there,
Yeah.
right? And I can listen to this and not feel alone or even feel heard or recognized, like there's something about, I mean, for me, that period of music that calls out to my soul and just says, we get it. Like
Yeah,
everything you're going through, we get it. And I'd
yeah,
never experienced that before. And I think it's, I mean, I'm very biased, but I think that the impact of that music on music is huge and powerful and important. Since 11, I was just like, okay, I'm going to listen to this music now. And then I just wanted all of it.
this is why I don't leave the house.
No, there's no point. The internet is rubbish. Why would you ever leave? There's no need.
No,
I have
there's
everything
no
I need in
need.
here.
Exactly. My record, do you have a record of not leaving the house? Like literally not walking outside your door.
I genuinely do it for genuinely weeks at a time. Like I
My
can.
record is like 4 months.
That is pretty damn good, though.
Yeah, I loved it. And it was funny because Marty would come over and he's like, dude, this place is like a mothership. I'm like, yes, it is. There's no reason for me to leave. There's nothing out there for me.
There's no reason. There's no.
There's
The only
nothing.
thing outside is poor people. So, like, not poor as in financially poor. I mean, poor as in
Yeah.
spiritually and mentally, emotionally unpleasant people who are out there living their best lives by ruining other people's.
There's awesome people. There's really great people. I mean, they're hidden amongst, like, sometimes like me and my son, like we look at crowds of people and we're like, man, this sometimes feels like we're in a dream sequence and these are literally NPCs. And we're like, what if we sit there and existentialize? We're like, what if we are some super like AI and we think we're like, what if we're super AI right now and we think that we're real and we're not real? Like, and he got me like kind of paranoid because he's like, what if all those pigeons you feed upstairs are just like drones meant to watch like what you're doing? And I'm like, and I remember like looking at some of the pigeons like
They're looking straight back at you. You can see the little green numbers
I was just
flashing
like,
through their eyes.
yeah, like right. So no, but it's like I mean we can't honestly we can't say that we're not AI,
Oh no, well
right? We
didn't
can't
they
say that.
just didn't a bunch of very clever people just publish research that shows that light waves behave differently when they're being observed, right? So that means that if someone is watching light, its behavior changes, which means that there is no objective reality, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly the whole universe is like actually being like human interaction with it is changing it, and it's like, so
Yeah.
this means that fundamentally we're definitely not living in an objective reality. We're almost certainly living in a simulation or some nonsense. I'm not a scientist. And I was like, oh, cool. So what we've always suspected, which is that everyone around us is probably an NPC, given the base level of IQ and their ability to just walk into walls again and again. Like, cool. We've finally proven that.
But like I really will. I mean, and you can go and the same thing in London. You can watch people walking, and it is very much like they are NPCs, and they're just like coming out of nowhere. And I do think about it a lot. I'm like, it's not. It goes back to the whole my 50-50. Like people ask me, like, what's the possibility of that? I'm like, it's 50-50. We either are, or we aren't. They're like, yeah, but what's the numbers? I'm like, it doesn't matter what the numbers are. We either are, or we aren't. You know.
Yeah, well, it's an existential question, right? There's no actual statistical number you can put on it. Although these guys would be like 99% certainty we're definitely living in a simulation. But
yeah, but see,
I think probably
me and
50-50
Desmond
is.
talk about this a lot because he's a math dude, and so and he doesn't always agree with my because he likes numbers and statistics and percentages, and I'm like, nah, everything's 50-50. He's like,
I
how could you
mean,
say that? There's probability. I'm like, probability is one thing, but like chances of something happening, it's just 50-50. It's either gonna happen or not happen. You know, it's either going to be a
reducing the
good day
world
or
to
it's not
binary,
going to be a good day. But tomorrow,
right?
the sun may or may not come up, and you may or may not wake up. And if you do, it could be a bad day or a good day.
It's just
But you know
your
what?
entire
It's
life
just
is a coin toss. That's all it
right.
is, guys.
But you know what? I think that makes it a lot easier. Like, you know, if you think about it, because then every day is a chance. It's like if you wake up, you're like, hey, today's going to be a good day. I survived that one. Like I woke up today. Like today's
You see, that's our
bound to be a
different
good
views,
day.
right? That's our different views. I wake up every morning like, God damn it!
So we got you to about 11.
Oh
Now,
yeah,
when I knew you at 14, 15, no, you know, yeah, even a bit later too. And yeah, like I could definitely see that your mom was like pro music, but like your whole family, like your sister's bedroom was covered. Like I don't know if like she probably shouldn't be embarrassed, but she had like tons of Take That
she
posters
should
and
definitely be embarrassed. There is no
yeah, she had
question she
tons
should
of.
be.
It's been tough because we had like two family members back to back, like die in succession one week after the other. And they were both my mom's cousins, and they were both younger than her. So you can imagine how she's been.
Yeah.
It's all of a sudden now she's like, I'm gonna die, this and that. And I'm just like, and said something really smart. He's like, you have to put it in perspective, Granny. He's like, they were in the hospital for like several months beforehand, and you're totally walking around and everything's good. And the more you think about that kind of stuff, that it just stresses you out more. It gives you, it's not good for you to think about like, oh, my days are numbered. But I can imagine that it must be difficult because, like, at
There's
our age,
a
we don't actually think about what is the end. We don't necessarily think about that whole getting old. I don't think a lot of people think about growing old,
no.
right?
So
Like the actual growing old part. So now when it actually happens, that must be kind of scary, you know?
yeah,
Like you realize that your
is
days are numbered.
well, and I think we're also at the age now where we see our parents diminishing, right? Like certainly
Yeah.
from my perspective. So I've obviously been intimately familiar with mortality and death since I was a little one, right?
Yeah.
So since I was 4. And so I was just telling my friend the other day, I've been to more funerals than weddings and I'm 44. That's not necessarily a cool stat. Even though I'm very prepared for mortality, unsurprisingly. Aging is terrifying, right? And as I watch my mother diminish day by day, and she, like, you remember my mum, like, she's a badass, right? Like,
Yeah.
no one messed with my mum. Everyone's terrified of my mum. She's 5 foot of, like, rage, as far as I could tell. And now, like, I live where I live because I'm 5 minutes away because there's no one else to help her in her world. She's
Yeah.
like 5 foot tall. She weighs like 60 pounds. Like, she's got COPD. She's had like cancer 3 times. Like, the woman she's deaf in both ears. She's going blind. Like, and
Yeah.
that terrifies me. Seeing that
Yeah.
terrifies me. I'm like, I don't like to think about getting old at all.
Yeah.
But then
I think
again,
that it's one of those things too, though, that people our age, it's almost a kind of a different trauma that a lot of people don't talk about, and it's
Mhm.
taking care of our elderly parents.
Yeah,
There's a lot of people talking about childcare and all that kind of stuff, and raising teens and raising kids, and a lot of stuff on work, but a lot of people don't. There's not a lot on there about taking care of your elderly parents, and
exactly that.
a lot of the conversations I have with friends these days, that's what we're talking about. Like we're talking about, okay, what, and we're sharing information like, oh, you should get this done, like a living trust. These are the conversations that we're having. Oh, you should get your power of attorneys done in case of this and that. And it's tough, but a lot of people don't realize that that also takes a huge emotional toll on people.
Yeah,
And so I think that
yeah.
there's tons of people suffering, like truly suffering, because they're trying to, and maybe they at the same time, like in my case, like you're trying to raise your child, but you're also having to be mindful of all this other stuff. It's it's tough. you know it's and
It's
nobody
it's
prepares you for that.
nope.
Nobody
At no
prepares you
point
for
in
that.
my life ever. I mean, obviously, again, slightly different because I lost a parent, but like so many of my friends just completely unprepared for the fact that like their parents are going to get old and die, and suddenly they're dealing with it on top of all of the life stress that you're going to deal with,
Yeah.
like a family, kids, work. Like, yeah, I knew all this was coming. Like, I remember
Yeah.
this. At no
Yeah.
point did anyone sit you down and be like, by the way, also, you're going to be dealing with like elderly people who need you to parent them now.
Yeah.
No one warned you about that.
Do you
It's
think maybe because our parents weren't looking after their parents, and so we didn't see it coming, we didn't go, oh, well, that's something we have to look forward to?
yeah, I think well, so like my grandparents. So my mum was born in 46, right? So my grandparents were literally war survivors. Like my mum's dad was in the army as a major in the army. So like
Yeah.
they had that sort of blitz spirit of like, we're never going to talk about this. We're never going to need help. Just leave us alone until we die, which is literally what happened for both my grandparents. They were just like, leave us alone, dude. Like, we're fine. Oh no, we're dead. Like, literally.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I don't think I don't think our parents had to deal with it in the same way because their parents were never going to look to their children for support.
I definitely want to get back to talking about music with you, but I also want to talk about something, and I don't mean to embarrass you. Oh, see, that's me. I want to talk about, these are just two I have. You are an author, and I think that
I
that's so
am.
cool because, and you're a children's author. This is a great character. Hemlock Jones is a great, great character. And The Angels of Death, this is the first book. Um, these are great. I mean, we come from an age where we didn't have all the social media, we didn't have the internet. So a lot of kids read. A lot of kids read. And you are a person, I mean, we would talk about writers when we were younger. And we came from, I think, a generation where a lot of people our age talked about writers. You know, some of the artists that we love would say, you know, that they would cite. And that's the other thing. When you'd open up NME or you'd up Melody Maker, a lot of times, you know, you would read about artists saying, oh yeah, um, you know, Kurt Cobain talking about loving William Burroughs, right? Doing A Priest, they called him, which I have that on vinyl. I have the
Well,
original. And it's got their signatures etched in on it
wow.
as well, which is, and it's a limited number vinyl. But I remember being as a kid, hearing him make that. It's like, oh, Kurt did this. He recorded this with him, and being on the hunt to go find that limited edition Priest, they called him. Um, and so, and I mean, they don't have that a lot now.
No, reading's kind of, without getting into all of the details of Amazon destroying the world, reading fell by the wayside, right, in the late 90s, early noughties. And it's now, I'm starting to see more people reading books again, but I don't think younger people necessarily reading books. I think in our day, we didn't have anything else to do at night, right? Like books and music. And I certainly, you know, I was reading books from a very young age, and I mean, it's just another form of escapism where I don't have to worry about my real life, right? But yeah, nowadays it seems to me that it's a lot more of a struggle to get younger people to read,
Mm.
and there's so much easily digestible, non-attention demanding media instead. So, you know, they can TikTok, Snapchat, Insta instead, and doom scroll
Mhm.
rather than reading, which is a shame. But yeah, I still
I don't
love
think
reading and
it's,
books.
I don't think it's hopeless. And the reason I say that, and I feel qualified to say this, is because I've been a children's librarian, because I've seen tons of kids go from not liking a book, not, it just really takes um, them finding the right book, but it also takes them being suggested the right book. I mean, I think that the readers are out there. It's just that there's too much other stuff going on. So you have to find it. I think that people, parents, brothers or sisters, you have to be the ones to suggest this kind of stuff or put that stuff out. Like when my child was still in my belly, before he was even born, I was already ordering his library. Like when he spawned out, like he had a full on, like we had every single Dr. Seuss, like we had everything. And like as it grew, like I was already buying him Diary of the Wimpy Kid when he was 2, because I'm like, okay, because I don't know at what rate, what kind of a voracious reader he might be, but I'm just going to leave all this out there. And so it's like he always had at, because that's what I had. Like I always had at my fingertips books. So it's like when I was lonely, when I was sad, when I couldn't go out because I had a ridiculously strict Asian mom and I'm not allowed to go out. Like music and books were my escapism.
Yeah,
You know, now
exactly.
it's like we don't have, there's, I mean, and there's great other ways of escapism. Like I was just talking to somebody the other day about, like, during COVID, drone photography was my escapism. And I'm so thankful for first person drone pilots, because they are taking me on a journey that I couldn't take. And I was like thinking about this the other day. Remember in Dragonflight when we got this really sick flying dragon mounts, right? I would spend hours just flying. swooping in down here. I loved that because it gave you a different, more aerodynamic with Dragonflight than before when you just had a flying mount, right? Flying mounts, you're just whatever. But here you had like aerodynamics and stuff that I'm sure that they took from FPV, right? But now when I'm watching the FPV pilots and doing that, I'm like, somebody did like along a coast of something and had all these like things, and I'm like, that's exactly the same flight path I take in World of Warcraft, but it's like real life, right?
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, that's what it would look like if it was real life, and I'm stoked because I was just hours, like hours flying. Like when Pandaria came out, Mr. Pandaria is still like one of the most beautiful worlds ever created, in my opinion. I mean, it was so beautiful. Like I'm not big on like some people are really big on the fishing and stuff, the fishing in World of Warcraft. It's not my big thing. Like if I had to get like a cooking thing, like it was a pain, right? I
I
would
can't be
cheat.
bothered
I'd
with
just go to
any of it.
auction, buy whatever I needed to do at auction, just get
Yep.
it done. But occasionally it's like, all right, let's try this whole thing. I'm not a fan of it. But when Pantera came out, I mean, I remember sometimes just flying myself to some little like unknown like little water hole on some mountain that was floating and just sitting there and going, this is chill. This is cool. I really like it, you know?
I I my World of Warcraft, like the way I engage with WoW is, I don't know if it's necessarily healthy, but I I don't care about any of the lore. I don't care about any of the roleplay. I don't care. I just like to beat the thing. And like, it's this weird the only way I'm competitive is basically World of Warcraft. I just want
Beat
to
what
beat the
thing?
thing.
What
Whatever the
thing?
thing is. Whatever it is. Like, the dungeon or that raid boss that we haven't beaten yet or whatever. Like, I want to beat that thing. And people
Yeah.
are like, so why are we fighting? I'm like, I don't know. Like, but what's the story behind what? Like, there's this giant freaking dude that's casting fire everywhere and he's just turned into an owl. Can we explain why I'm doing that? I'm like, no, I have no idea. I just want to beat him because he's in my way and I don't like that. I want to beat
Yeah.
him. And so my entire WoW experience, and it's literally since beta, right, is just been like, beat the thing until I've done beating the thing and then wait for the next thing to beat. And so when you're like, oh, I just went to this magical place, and I'm like, probably just flew through that at some point on my way to kill a thing. I'm sure it was beautiful. But also I play a rogue, so I only ever see the back ankles of bad guys anyway. So it doesn't even make, like, I don't even I don't actually enjoy the visual experience of raiding because I'm staring
I,
at a dude's butt. Like, that's it. No, I don't
you
PvP
guys
though,
are the
so
bane of
you
my
can't,
existence.
don't have a go
You
at me, I don't
rogue.
PvP.
I rogues. I don't curse any other tune more than I curse rogues. I honestly, it's just I don't know how many times like God, like rogue, God, you know, it's like oh, especially in battlegrounds, right? Like rogues, like oh. So I'm like always, it's like just because of that, like I always play my DK, so I'm always AOE, AOE, AOE on the flag, AOE on the flag, AOE on the flag, just because you guys are sneaky. You're so sneaky. It's just so I hate rogues. I mean, I
I
respect
love
it,
it.
I've never it's funny because I've never in all the times, like a lot of people, like I've been playing since Burning Crusade. And so it was like that was the first expansion. And then my friend Mike Coulter, who was in a band called Lifter. And you know what's funny? I tangent. I discovered Lifter by like one night on 120 minutes. There was this guy named Matt Pinfield, and Matt Pinfield was like everybody's older brother, right? He would just play like the coolest stuff on 120 minutes, like at nighttime. And so one night he played this band called Lifter, and I liked the sound. It was like, you know, in that era, 95, 96 era. But then I saw like Dave Navarro. I'm like, Dave Navarro's in this video. He just made this cameo in this video. And so, like, I remember I went out and I tried to go find the record. I bought the record, and then they were signed on Interscope, and then I never heard anything about them again. Like, that was it. It was like crazy, right? So I'm like, what happened to this band? Like, they were signed on Interscope. Like, Interscope's pretty big. What happened to them? Didn't know what happened for years, right? So then the internet, you know, starts getting what, you know, bigger, better, whatever. And they start having like blog sites and music sites and message boards. And um, I had been buying on eBay like every copy of the Lifter album, which was called Melinda. Uh, Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt. That was the name of it. And that alone, Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt. It's like, oh, citing a writer. Oh, I like this band. And so as a lyricist, I found the lyrics were so good. I found the music so good. It was very grungy. Like I said, didn't know what happened, but I would just buy all these albums. And a lot of time they were like 1 cent, 1 cent, $1, and I just buy them. And then I'd give them to my friends. And I remember Marty sitting there. I gave it to Marty. He's like, dude, why don't you just burn it and like make a copy of the thing? I'm like, no, because you have to have the album. You have to have the artwork. You got to read, you have to have the experience. And so I wrote this whole thing one time on some blog. I'm like, so this is an album that existed. I don't know. And like, it was just me writing like I had no follow. It was just writing to the air, really. It was just like, there was a site, I think it was called Live Journal or something. And it was just like a blog, right? I had no followers. You just put shit out in the air and you just thought, okay, maybe people read it. People might not read it. People had more personal things like this is going on in my life. But for me, I was just like, this band existed. I don't know what happened to them. I even sent Jimmy Iovine a letter, like when email came out saying, what happened to this band? Where did it go? And it was just crazy. And somehow Mike finds this and it makes his day. Like, here's some crazy fan so he contacts me and I was just like, Mike, and I remember this is really funny. I said, Mike, do you have any siblings? And he's like, no. And I'm like, so look, we are going to be unofficial, like family. You're going to be my family from now on. Is that cool? And he was like, absolutely, totally. And Mike has been family ever since. And it's a funny thing. And Mike was the person that was like, you need to, and Mike was living with Johnny at the time. And then there's a whole story. There's a book out there. I have it somewhere around here next to your book. It's called Wrecking Crew. And it's a story about what happened to Mike and Lifter. And it's a story about addiction. But it's a beautiful story about addiction and redemption through baseball. And it was like the story about like how Mike decided that in order to beat his addiction, Interscope pretty much just dropped them because of his addiction, right? So he just kind of decided that to get off of it, he needed to go back to what he loved, which was baseball. So he decided, how am I going to start a baseball league and stuff like that, and started asking people, hey, you want to start a baseball league? And so they had this whole baseball thing. A book was written about it.
That's mad.
Totally mad.
What a what if moment, right? What a like forks in the multiverse moment. Like
it is, but going back to this.
Well, we don't have to do that.
No, but we don't have. But you know what? Maybe it was just that time of our lives, and that's how I associate it. I love Everything Is Cool. That was your first book.
It was, yeah. I'm not sure it's a very good book.
I thought it was a very good book. I think that I remember how excited I was to hold it in my hand, because it was just like, dude, Justin like wrote a book. He got it published. Like, that is so cool. I was like so proud of you. Because you've been one of those people, and like I think it's like we were talking about, I think that when you read a lot, your vocabulary is different, right? And that's maybe something that also has been lost in this shuffle of new age vocabulary. I loved your letters. Let's just say that. Like, I mean, aside from all the like smack talking about bands, it was
which was 90% of everything I wrote in the 90s, to be honest.
Yeah. You were a very cynical child, but I think that in all the best ways possible, like just kind of like question authority, which I tried to tell my son. I'm like, you don't. I'm like that hippie mom, like, don't trust anybody over 30. Like, question everything, I'm like the worst parent.
No, I think that's the right. I mean,
no, not for that. Like, I'm the one that's like, ditch
yeah, you're
today. And he's like, no, I'm not.
You're
ditching.
freaky and paranoid and misbehaving. Yeah.
He's like, I got to go to school today. I know, but there's like something. There's like a cartoon thing going. There's a cartoon exhibit. You should ditch.
Whereas I think I grew up. So my mum's crazy smart. And I think I grew up watching my mum basically be like, no, you're not as smart as me. I'm not going to listen to what you say. And that was like her approach, which, in the 80s as a woman was pretty badass, right? And so I grew up with that sort of, if I don't necessarily, like, if I'm talking to Stephen Hawking, like, and he's telling me about physics, I'm going to listen. If you're not super smart or you're not an expert in your field, then why am I listening to you? Why are you telling me with authority something that actually you don't know about? And so I grew up being quite cynical because I grew up thinking, I don't believe you. You're not convincing me. And I've grown up learning that if you're not convincing me, then I don't have to believe what you're saying, which is great for independent thinking and terrible for just life in a terrible Western capitalist society, because I have to do what stupid people tell me all the time.
What's your star sign?
Pisces.
I know what it is. Here's the funny thing, and the reason I asked you this, we have talked about it like way in the past. We have talked about it. We haven't talked about it in the last decade or so. But like, I find it funny. Like, I tell people this all the time, that I find it funny that even though I could be really open-minded about it, right? Like, who's to say? Who's to say? Like, it's a study. Like, if people are not really like, people just think astrology is about fortunes and whatever. But like, the principles of astrology is, people think if you're born in this space and time, that, and there's certain stars in the sky at certain times, that there's certain energies, right? And the more and more we find out about energies, it's like, who's to say that there's not a little something to that, whether you call it whatever it is, that maybe certain planets emit certain energies. We know that science has showed us, like, they have that one exhibit where they play a sound and they've got all these balls, but it's only the right frequency will make the balls move, right? So it's like, perhaps certain planets, certain whatever, do have different vibrations and frequencies, that when we are born in a certain place in time, at a spot in time when the Earth is at this particular place, maybe that affects us, right? Who's to say? However, when I look at the people that are closest to me, I find patterns, right? I find that there is a lot of Pisces, there's a lot of Capricorns, and a lot of my bestest friends, like most of my best friends, are Aries, which is the exact opposite of me on the star sign. And I find that I'm like, yeah, I totally understand why. With Aries is because I am such a kind of a passive, like, I'm so emotional, but like on a passive side, that they kind of have that stronger, like, bull, whatever, not bull, but like ram, like a different approach. And so it's like, most of my best friends are Aries. They have the exact opposite reaction to everything that I do, which is, I like that. And so it's like, because if I was with somebody all the time, or talking to somebody that does everything exactly the way I do, I'm not ever going to learn anything. So a lot of times I'm like, dude, am I crazy? Like, I'll tell them something, I'm like, am I crazy? And they're like, a lot of times they're like, yeah, you're totally crazy. It's totally, yeah, you need to chill out, or you need to whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I find that that's good for me. And it's the same with Pisces. I think that Pisces and me are one that can kind of understand emotion better than most people, but Pisces tend to be empaths a lot too, and can read people and feelings and stuff. I think water signs are like that. And so it's like,
definitely
I
that way.
feel that, yeah, I'm open to it,
Yeah,
I'm not going to say no.
Well, you can't
50.
prove a negative, right? So
Just
that's
like
like,
God, just like
yeah,
God. Like,
exactly.
people ask me, like, the kids ask me all the time, do you believe in God? And I'm like, I go with what Carl Sagan said. I don't have proof that he exists, but I don't have proof he doesn't exist,
Yeah,
And
so
that's just that.
I go one step further purely because I don't know, cynical, probably. As you said, I don't tend to believe in things that, well, I don't tend to believe in things, right? I don't tend to believe because I like to know. So if there's proof of it, then it's a fact. And it doesn't matter if I believe in it or not.
Yeah.
What I don't like is this idea that if you can't prove it doesn't, then it does. And I'm like, that's Bertrand Russell's teapot is my favorite example of that, right? So Bertrand Russell, he said, cool, let's say God exists. Let's say the teapot exists and it's floating around the sun right now. Prove I'm wrong. They're like, well, we've got telescopes. Oh, no, it's too small to see with a telescope. Well, no, but our telescope can see it. No, it's too small. It's on the other side of the sun right now. You can't. Prove I'm wrong. Prove I'm wrong. And they're like, well, that's stupid. And he's like, it is kind of, huh? kind of stupid to believe in a thing that I just randomly said that you can't prove is wrong.
Yeah.
And so I always struggle a bit with, like, I would say I'm an atheist purely because I need something to demonstrate that that's a thing, right? If
Yeah.
someone were to say,
Did you hear what Ricky Gervais had said recently about that when somebody asked him? It was a brilliant
yeah,
answer.
it is
Brilliant
fantastic,
answer.
yeah.
Where he just basically said, so I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in a God. And you believe in a God, but you don't believe in whatever, 999 other gods. And I just
Exactly.
believe in one more God that you don't believe. I just don't
Exactly
believe
that.
in one more God than you, just one
Yeah,
more. And it was
exactly.
just like perfect,
He's,
like brilliant
he was,
answer.
he also was that he said, his other thing is, he was like, let's say humanity crumbles next week.
Yeah.
In 1,000 years, science books will be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Science books will be the same. Gravity will still be gravity. Physics will still be
Yeah.
physics.
Yeah.
However, will the Bible be a thing? No, it'll be a whole new God. Whole new gods. Who knows what the latest belief system will be in that new society? And for that reason alone, I find it hard to believe in a God because it's a story
Yeah.
that some people told you. So
I'm going to cut.
I'll just say that Everything Cool is not a very good book necessarily, but it was an interesting
I think
exercise.
that it was, I think it's a good starting book. You know what?
Yeah,
I'm a fan
maybe.
of anybody that just writes. Like, you know what? If you write and you put something out, that's more than most people do. And words and ideas, I think that are so important, you know? Like I said, I've had kids that, came and I remember this, my first year as a librarian. I remember kids just telling me, I don't like this. I don't like reading it. I'm like, what do you like? And he was like 10 and he's like, I like watching soap operas at night. They have these Thai soap operas. I'm like, okay, what do you like about these soap operas? I'm like, do you like the romance? What do you like? He's like, no, it's just like this person's sneaky, but this person and they're like double crossing this person. And there's just like drama. And so like I grabbed and I was like, okay, let's do Macbeth. And I got like a child's version, like a child friendly version. And we just like made charts and we like linked this to this and did all this kind of stuff. And he got really into it when we got done with that. Let's do Hamlet. We did Hamlet, you know. After that, we did Midsummer's Night Dream. That turned out to be his favorite because like this person's chasing this person, that person's chasing that
I
person, who's
mean, yeah.
chasing that person. He's like, and afterwards it was like so crazy because it's not that he read it. He understands it. I'm like, ask him who's chasing who. Ask him what's going on. And she did. And it was just like, so I think that I think kids want to, they just don't know how to find it. And I think it's the same with music, which is like why I wanted to do something like that. Because if there are kids that don't have, maybe you have a parent that didn't listen to music, maybe you didn't have siblings that listen to music. How are kids finding music today? And it's just like, maybe it's these little DIY podcasts. Who
It
knows?
definitely is, right? And people are, so, people will hear that background music in that one video. What is it right now? It's freaking Gloria Estefan, right? It's Dr. Beat by Gloria Estefan and the Miami Sound System is like the tune that kids are listening to right now. Like, and it's
But that's
in backgrounds to
awesome.
videos. Like, it's
Yeah.
amazing, right? But that's how they're finding music now. That feels like it's a novelty experience. The thing
People
that
have to
really
talk
draws you
about
to
it.
it. Yeah.
People have to talk about it. It's like, like one of the there was a popular song by Surf Chris. Okay, Surf Chris did a song called Freak, right? And it was just a nice song, but then somebody used it, what he did, and he just took his own spin. So he recorded a band that wasn't that necessarily big, but they had a really catchy song. He re-recorded it, put it to different videos. That blew up, right? That
Mm.
blew up on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever. People think it was his band. But then when you deep dive, you found, oh no, this is actually a band called Surf Curse. And then I fell in love with Surf Curse, but that's how I found out about it. It's a great song. Fast forward a year later, Travis Barker must totally love that song too, because he contacts them like, hey dude, can I drum? They re-record the song with him drumming complete, like, and it's awesome. Like it's just it's the same song, but just with Travis's drumming. It's louder, whatever, but it's awesome. But it's like I think that yeah, reels are good. Like some people don't like it. There's some peers that like, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like that people can use songs. Some people don't like Spotify because Spotify pays artists shit. But at the same time, if this is the only way that kids can get music, that's awesome. But you that needs to have more context. So what Anuj is doing, I love what Anuj is doing because, and when I find out that he was in his 20s, like when he finally contacts me back and it's like, hey, thank you for sending me this note about, you and your son, that made my day. And I find out that he was an Indian kid that grew up in Dubai. And that blew me away because I was like, how did you get into all these bands? Like Metallica, he
Mm.
did so many Metallica things. I'm like, I want to hear your story. How did an Indian kid that grew up in Dubai find Metallica? Like, because call me ignorant, right? Because I don't know what it's like to grow up in Dubai, right? So I don't know what kind of music is there. Can you listen to that there? How did you discover it? Like how? And so those were all the different kind of things that I'm curious about. And like, so it's been a journey asking people how they discovered music when they were a kid, but also hearing them I mean, it's so interesting to me
Yeah,
because I think that music is so important to people's lives. It might be one of the most important things in people's lives. And they may
it's
not realize it.
unquestionably the most important thing in my life.
Yeah,
Unquestionably.
yeah, same.
Like it changed my life. It saved my life. It is, yeah, it's the one constant. I think
Yeah,
particularly or maybe not particularly, but from my experience, like my friends' kids are like my oldest godchild's now, they just turned 18. And I'm like, what music are you into? Like, what do you like? And they're like, oh, I listened to a bit of this when I was younger, but I'm not really sure now. And I'm like, be sure, like find your thing, because for me, it was an anchor and a safe space throughout my entire life. And I definitely wouldn't be here without music. Like I wouldn't
yeah.
be alive without music. Like find your thing and grab it and love it and defend it and champion it. Um, and
Because
I
sometimes
really
music is
hope
our first therapist.
100%, 100%, like sitting alone as a teenager, thinking, as every teenager does, right? Like I'm so weird and no one will ever understand me because I'm a 13-year-old boy or girl or non-binary person going through everything that entails. And then you hear that one song or you hear that one band or you hear that one lyric and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe it's not just me.
Yeah.
And like it's so important. I mean, literally without that,
Yeah.
I don't know
I,
how I could get through life.
I remember my first case of unrequited love as a youngster. And it was just like, I didn't, because I had a super strict mom, like I wasn't allowed to have boyfriends or anything like that. So there was like no chance of me going out or anything like that. But my one case of unrequited love, and it was just like I would go home and I'd be so sad. There was like no way this person was going to talk to me or anything like that. But just playing The Cure's 1,000 Hours and just sobbing, like on repeat, sobbing over and over. I mean, he's singing, for how much longer can I cry into this wind? For how much longer can I cry like this? 1,000 hours just thrown away just to feel my heart for a second. I was like, oh my God, I know, Robert, how you feel. Like that, that's what music did, right? It was just like,
Yeah.
that was it. And even today, like somebody reposted, because I think they said it was like 35 years of love song,
Yeah,
which,
that's right.
and I was like, man, that's a good song though. That's still such a good song. And even listening to it today though, and I was like, am I sad? Like, and I really thought about that today because I remember the first time hearing that song and thinking, man, I would love to find somebody that loves me like that, right? That's how I felt. Like, I'm like, wow, I mean, what he's singing about. Like, sometimes you would hear songs go, man, I hope to find a love like that, right? That's just the romantic in me. That's not always what happened, right? Usually not what happened. But as I was like thinking about it today, and I'm like, yeah, that's still such a solid good song, right? Like there was a hopefulness, right? Sometimes when you heard songs growing up, Depeche Mode, a lot of times, um, somebody like, and I've talked about this before, somebody was a great song. Um, Martin Gore singing about, sharing, your life with somebody and just feeling the same feelings. And yeah, as a kid, yeah, I wanted that. and I, never stopped short of looking for it, just didn't always work out, and that was tough. And it's only later in life that you realize, like, okay, some people were just, you're meant to get together with a person, but it's not necessarily that you're meant to stay with that person forever. Maybe it was an experience, it was something that either you or them, there was some kind of lesson maybe that the cosmos needed to teach you, that you needed to learn. But as a kid, I didn't know that. So I was like wrecked so much in life, thinking like, well, I'm never going to find love. Like, no one's ever going to love me. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm like not smart enough. I'm not interesting enough. Like, I'm not pretty enough. Like, if I didn't have music, I don't know what I would do, because there were times when I thought no one, no one on this whole entire planet could understand. And
And I
so
heard,
many of us have been there.
then I heard
So
Scream
many of us
Major
have
by
been there,
Therapy, and I
you
realized
know?
that we all have that.
Yeah. But as a
Like
kid, you
that.
think that you're the only one, right?
Oh
And
yeah, and then
and,
I
and so
hear
it,
I heard certain songs, and I'd be like, oh wait a minute, like this person who might even only be what, like 5 years older than me, has gone through exactly that, and they wrote a song about it, and they've shared it with the world, and now I at least acknowledge that I'm not alone in feeling that way. Even something like as basic as like Self-Esteem by The Offspring, right? Like, I'd listen to that age 16, 15 and be like, ah, okay, right. So this is a thing I'm feeling. He also felt this. Okay,
yeah,
it's a thing. Right, cool. I need to figure out what is going on here. Like,
yeah.
every one of those was a sort of an awakening or an epiphany moment, right?
Hmm.
To help you figure out who you are and how you deal with these things, and to help you figure out or help you realize that you're not alone in experiencing them,
It's
which,
funny because I knew somebody, well, I know somebody that would sometimes get like upset when they were, I have a lot of different friends that play in bands, and a lot of different friends that have played in bands a long time. And sometimes people would say like, yeah, sometimes they get tired when they just want to hear like the old stuff and they don't want to hear the new stuff. And it's kind of frustrating. And it's like, you need to, a lot of times people don't want to hear the old stuff because they think the old stuff is better. That's not that's not why. Sometimes it's because there's an emotional connection that they remember, like maybe that was a song that made them get over something, or maybe that was a song that made them get back up. So I said sometimes you have to go a little easy on people, that sometimes it's not the reasons that you think. It's not because like, oh, that's the best stuff you ever wrote was that album and I just want to hear songs from that album. It's not, it's usually not that.
no, it's the
It's
emotional
usually not
connection that you
that.
have with it, right?
Yeah, it's
And it's
usually
often
not
the old
that at all.
stuff. No, it's I think for me, it's actually when it's exactly like you say, right? You discover a song and it's a moment for you.
Yeah.
And then no matter what else is released after that, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if this was the first album they created or the 10th album they've released. If that's your moment, then that's the moment you want to relive
Yeah.
again, or
Yeah.
you want to feel that way, or you want the catharsis of experiencing it again, even if it's a bad song, right? Or a negative song,
Yeah.
sad song, whatever. And I remember Trent Reznor, the Wave Goodbye tour, right, which was like 2009 maybe, and he
Hmm.
was like, I'm stopping touring. Like, I don't want to tour anymore because I know I'm going to have to play Hurt. And while that is cathartic for every person in the audience, I am literally going back through drug addiction again for 4.5 minutes every night for six
Yeah.
months. Like, I
Yeah.
don't need that in my life anymore. It is destroying me.
Yeah.
And so I remember thinking, I'm sad because I love that song and I love that whole album, but I get it. Like,
Yeah.
what is for me this incredibly emotional, cathartic moment where I will literally sob like a child listening to it live is actually re-tearing open a wound and
Yeah.
showing it to everyone again, and then stitching it back up, and then the next
Hmm.
night opening it all up again. It's incredible. It's like
Yeah.
the
So it's like
power
both
of
sides. I
music.
mean, both sides of the coin. I can understand both sides. I fully get
Exactly.
it. And it's like it's I absolutely get that. I couldn't do it. And some people say, "Oh, but yeah, you're making money off the song." It doesn't matter. That's like an emotional thing that sometimes people are writing. Like you said, "Hurt" is a particularly emotional song, you're talking about self-harm, which a lot of people can relate to, but and some people sit there and go, self-harm, these snowflakes, whatever. But sometimes, like, I understand that being in that place where it's not like you don't it's not that people want to hurt themselves. They just want to feel something other than what they're feeling, right?
Exactly.
So it's not like, oh, I want to hurt myself. Sometimes people that self-harm don't even want to die. Some of them don't want to die. They just don't want to feel what they're feeling. And some people don't, they can't help that. Like depression is not like, it's not a fad, it's like chemicals are imbalanced
Oh, I
and
wish it
and
was
stuff
a
like that,
fad.
right? So it's like there's no choice. So yeah, but I totally get that. So I always say to on all sides, just everybody go easy on one another. Like, fans go easy on the artists, artists go easy on the fans. There's a lot of emotions, but in that, appreciate that there's like this beauty in it that people could relate to that. Like it's more than I could do, right?
I
Like,
mean, I write books in the hopes that like kids will find something in it that's escapist. But I consider the making of music to be an art form far beyond my capabilities or abilities, because the instant and lasting connection that you can have is
mhm.
just like it's mind boggling to me. Has found a
However,
way to
she is
live.
a great role model, a very strong, powerful character. And can I ask you though, because I did mean to ask you this, how easy or difficult was it to write the character of Hemlock Jones? And did you have people in mind? Like you've talked a lot about how strong your mom is, what an amazing woman she is. Do you think that you took some of those things into developing this character?
Yeah, so I think I find writing Hemlock really easy, actually. When I first thought about what is actually not an original idea at all, but when I first decided that I wanted to write about Hemlock, I was like, okay, so let's start writing and see how it comes up. And I'll take that Sherlock Holmes approach of it being the Dr. Watson character that's talking about her and see how how it works for me. And the first scene from that book is the first thing I wrote, where she's like picking him apart and she knows everything about him, and it's all because like she's some sort of super genius. But then they go upstairs and it's literally because she got told 5 minutes earlier that he was turning up. This is where he was coming from. All of that, and it's just like a total loudly and with confidence moment of someone who actually is kind of faking it a bit, and that resonates with me quite a lot with imposter syndrome and like thinking that I might be smart but also faking it a lot. And then I'm very lucky that I've surrounded myself with really strong, smart women. Like all of my friends actually are awesome, smart, strong, fantastic women. And I wanted to write about someone who didn't need anyone else and a woman who didn't need anyone else. And I wanted to write about someone who is definitely a bit odd, a bit like me, but who makes it a bit of a superpower, you know? And I genuinely love Hemlock, and I think she's
Yeah.
like I really love writing her actually. And Dulwich College actually randomly asked me to write a short story for some like anniversary thing of like writers past and present or something. And
Oh, nice.
so I wrote another Hemlock short story set in Dulwich College, and I was like, this is just so easy. Like I just love how easy it is to put Hemlock anywhere. Like
That's so
she's
cool.
just such a great character from my perspective. Yeah, it's really cool. I think I think it's PG. Is it PG Woodhouse that gets kidnapped or something stupid? Like I picked another like famous Dulwich kid, and he gets
Yeah.
kidnapped, and she has to like find him. Um, but again, yeah,
Off
just
topic,
I
have you
love writing
ever
about it. I love talking about writing. I love talking about stories and ideas and trying to help people frame them. As you know, right? Like we're trying to do that ourselves. Like we're talking about trying to figure out.
Yeah, but see, I think that being a librarian too, and all that kind of stuff, but um the kids loved Hemlock Jones. So I've seen firsthand when I read it to them, and they always thought it was like a cool thing. I'm like, I know the author. And they're like, oh, it's like that is more exciting to them than if I said like, oh, I knew this rock and roll star, right?
All I want in life is stability and peace. That's it.
That's it.
I
I
don't.
don't
I don't
have
need
a
anything else.
nope, that's it, man. Like Angus is always like, "Oh, what do you want for your birthday? What do you want?" I'm like, "Nothing. I'm good. I'm totally good. Like there's nothing I want." Like every now and then there'll be a new like game.
I'm exactly
I'm
the
like,
same way. Exactly.
I want to have you back on though, because like we're going on like 4 hours here or something, right? Um, I want to have you back on though, um, just to go down a rabbit hole of World of Warcraft though, like more in depth. Because, like I said, I hate rogues.
Don't
Um,
hate the player, hate the game.
that's right. Are you getting the new expansion?
Yeah, of course.
Are you? You know what? Because I'm on European servers.
Oh,
So
are you?
I'm yeah, I'm on the like after a while I switched. Um and and they were really cool at Blizzard. I'm like, look, I'm on a US thing, but every time I go on because it's like 14-hour difference and stuff, there's nobody on. I can't find anybody to do stuff with me. So can I switch? And they actually transferred everything over, which was really cool.
That's
So
great.
I've been for like I think it's about been like 8 or 9 years now I've been on a European server. Um so we should I want to do the new expansion. I'm so stuck on playing a DK. I love um
You have literally been a Death Knight forever. Like
forever.
I don't
And
remember a time when you weren't Death Knight.
it's funny because when I first started, um the first tune I had was a warlock, and I was a warlock and I was a jeweler. And I quickly found I did not want to do it was too much of a hassle being a jeweler. Like I wanted the easiest thing possible. It's too expensive and too much. I just didn't want to do it. So my jobs are always herbalism, and it's finding rocks. That's it. Like that's good, and I just sell that stuff. Like
I I
I
literally
don't want to
take
do anything else.
enchanting. I only do enchanting because I will be picking up items anyway to disenchant. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even have to go out of my way to gather anything. Like,
Yeah.
I'm an enchanter. That's all I do. I don't do anything else. I can't be bothered. I will skill up enchanting by destroying shit as I upgrade my kit. I don't want to do anything else.
How close are you with like are you in a guild? Is your guild
Yeah.
close, or is it because I like in when I was in guilds in the States, this is a crazy story. This is this crazy rock and roll related story too. So when Mike invited me, told me I should join World of Warcraft, I should start World of Warcraft, he's like, get the World of Warcraft and get the new expansion that just came out, Burning Crusade, get it. And he got me on a server and got me in a guild. And what was crazy was like everybody in the guild, they were like, oh, like Jennifer Finch from like L7 was like in the guild. Like there's like the rock and rollers like playing World of Warcraft. And I thought that was like so cool. Speaking of rock and rollers, did you hear the World of
No.
Warcraft lawsuit? So
No.
some years ago, some guy like ended up trying to sue Activision and Blizzard because he said that World of Warcraft was so addicting that it made him not have any friends, and it made him turn into a sad, depressed loner. And then he cited Martin Gore in the lawsuit and said, look at Martin Gore plays World of Warcraft, and look, he's sad and depressed. Obviously, like, so that was like crazy. But so that's a
That's
crazy
brilliant.
Depeche Mode World of Warcraft story that not a lot of people know about. But yeah, you could
That
look it
is
up.
brilliant.
It's
I
crazy.
mean, I
It's like
get it.
so crazy. It's like
I'm sad and depressed, and I play World of Warcraft.
it's probably because of Martin Gore.
Probably
It's like
is. Martin Gore made me depressed. That's my new getting that tattooed on my back.
that's just that. But I don't think he was even saying that Martin Gore made him depressed. It was just like he just randomly cited, like,
You
look at
just
Martin
randomly
Gore.
picked that. Look at
Yeah.
Martin Gore. He plays well, and he's a miserable git.
Yeah, he's like, look at what, yeah. That's like, that's sad. That's like this. Can you imagine though, like what his bandmates must have said?
They would have been like,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
I
it's true.
told you that
He's
was nerdy stuff,
yeah,
geeky stuff. See, this is what you get.
miserable loser in the corner." But no, I
Um,
am, yeah. So I'm in a
there's
guild.
so much I need to talk to you about. I need to talk to you about the caves.
We don't need to ever talk about this. Although, although this is my that's
Cape.
yeah, just a load of cave stuff, and then over here is more cave stuff. And in fact, you can't really see, I don't think, but yeah, you can. Like that. There is a frog on top of a staff.
See, I remember the cave days. I remember getting letters from you written in Elvish.
Oh, you're welcome. Did you
I
ever
remember,
translate it? No, probably not.
um, no, and some of them you would not translate at the time for me, but then later on, I was able to translate some of them because I got books. You know, you go to the library and check out books, and that's how you get information, you know? Yeah, we have crazies. There's a lot of crazy stories. One of my favorite crazy stories, and I'll let you go soon. One of my crazy favorite stories is when Mark, my friend Mark and me came to London, and you and I lost Mark at some point. We couldn't find Mark, and we were quite worried about Mark because Mark was pretty much, if you ever saw the movie Conspiracy Theory, he was the character that Mel Gibson played, looked exactly like him in Conspiracy Theory. And it was concerning because we were really worried about Mark. I remember we went back to your mom's, um, and we thought maybe because we'd brought Mark to your mom's like the night before, so we thought maybe he would
Mhm.
come back to Mark. And I remember your sister being very concerned about what happened to Mark because she liked Mark, so she's like, "What have you done with Mark?" And we didn't know what to do. And then finally, like 12:01, he rolled into the sketchy hotel, and that's a whole nother story too.
That hotel
Um,
was a place.
that was
I've never
I got
forgotten that
stories.
place.
I mean, we were scared.
You should have
Like
been
we were
scared.
scared to leave. We were scared to leave, and that there's so many the one-armed man. There was so many. There was some
They are definitely
sketchy
Scooby
stuff.
Doo's. Yeah, no
And I said,
question.
and one time, were you there the time that the basement finally got open and there was a random person that made some kind of tea, and then the guy saw and he locked up the door again, and we were like, what? Is she a prisoner?
Very strange place. And I remember coming in, it was like that really thin brown carpet that went all the way up the stairs. And it was the creepy one armed dude just like standing just on the right with that like desk window thing. And he was like, you walked in, he made you feel like you were not meant to be there. He was like, I'm
Yeah.
taking your money, but I do not want you here.
And there was
It was,
no other guests. There were no other
no,
guests, and in the middle of the night, for reasons unknown, the alarms would just go off, and I remember me and Mark were like, "Do we go out?" Like, we'd go out, we'd look around, and there's, like, nobody else is
nothing.
going out, and we're like, "What do we do?" And every day we thought, "Okay, you know what? Tomorrow we'll wake up, and we're just gonna change hotels. We're just gonna go someplace else." And I think there was, like, Wimbledon was going on at that time, or something was happening that
Mm-hmm.
all the hotels were booked up. That's why we ended up at that hotel. There was, like, no place. And then we're
Mm-hmm.
probably gonna die in the middle of the night. So we ended up never leaving because we were too
No.
scared to leave. And but anyways, so at 12:01, Mark rolls in and we're like, dude, where have you been? And he was like, ah, I realized I just had my all-day pass, so I just been sitting on the train going in circles. And I remember, and we
It
were
was on
just
the
like,
circle
what the
line,
fuck
that's
are you
right.
talking about? And he's like, but there was a part that was a little bit sketchy and a little bit shady because there were these guys that were following me and I thought they were going to jump me, these skinheads. And we were just, and remember, we were just like, Mark, you are a skinhead. We're like, your head is shaved. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think that they were going to jump you? Your head shaved. Like,
You
they
look
probably
like
were
their
wanted to
people.
recruit you, right? And
Exactly.
he's just like, and then I remember, I remember we were watching something and Mark decided he came back and we were like, "Where'd you go today?" And we were just asking him where he went. He's like, "Yeah, I went down to Camden Town." We're like, "What'd you get?" He's like, "I got some animal nitrate." Do you remember that? And then we were watching something and he came over and he was like, looking at it, he's like, "That's the craziest thing I ever seen." We're like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "What's going on with that roller coaster and all that stuff?" He's like, "Is it bad? Is it the news?" We're like, "No, dude, it's a movie." He's like, "Oh, it's a movie." He's like, "I thought it was a roller, I thought it was the news." He's like, and we're just like, "How much of that stuff did you take?" And I remember at one point he's like, "That wasn't that much." And we look over at him and he went, and then he just went clunk and passed over. And we're like, "Is he dead?"
Yeah.
We were just like, "Is he dead?"
And I didn't know what animal nitrate was. I'm like, what is it? You were just like trying to tell me, you were like, I think it's this, but you were like 18, right? So you were just like,
Yeah.
I think it's this and that. And we're like, is he dead? We're like, man, he can't die in this hotel with those people.
No,
We're like,
no, they'll
what's
eat
gonna
him.
happen?
They'll literally eat him.
And then he turned and then he sat up, totally upright. He flopped over on his back, and then he lifted up his legs. Remember, he like bent his legs, lifted up, and fell asleep with his legs in
Yeah,
the
with
air
his
while
legs
on
up in
his
the air.
belly.
Yeah.
And we were just like, and I remember thinking, man, I'm never gonna try animal nitrate. I don't know what that shit is. I'm like, this looks bad.
Yeah.
Like, this looks so bad.
He was hilarious though.
Oh my God. That was such a, yeah, we have so many good memories. For going into Forbidden Planet. See, that's why I sent you the thing the other day, because I just remember going into the comic book stores with you.
I love Forbidden Planet. It's still probably my
One of my
favorite
favorite,
shop in London.
also one of my favorite things. Did your mom still live where you live? She lived,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So one of my favorite things, and it's weird because a lot of people don't like cemeteries. But man, I loved walking to your house because I loved walking by the cemetery. A lot of people don't like cemeteries. I love cemeteries. I always say hi to
Me too.
everybody. And so,
there's something spectacularly peaceful about a cemetery. Like that cemetery is always quiet. It's always relaxed. You can just hear bird song. It's beautiful. Like,
yeah.
and there's some crazy shit in that cemetery as well. Like I found a tree with chains growing in it. Like,
Oh, wow.
It's so cool. It's so cool. I'm going to write a story about it at some point. Like there's literally chains in this, like growing in this tree. Like, why is that here? Who did that? So Shel Silverstein, right? The Giving Tree.
The Giving Tree.
Is that kind of vibe, right? Which, interestingly, you can't get in the UK. Shel Silverstein never made it to the UK. So I have all the Silverstein books, obviously, because amazing. And no one in the UK...
And you sent that, and you sent him Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh. Everyone needs a copy of Winnie the Pooh. Everyone. The whole world should read Winnie the Pooh.